Thanks for listening to Oikos Stories. What would change in your life if the ordinary moments became ministry opportunities? Today I'm talking with Pastor Bill Staffieri. Bill is the senior pastor of Beach Point Church in Fountain Valley, California. Bill and I have a great conversation about these mundane moments in life. As we think about the Oikos principle and the way that it integrates into ministry, it can get logistically minded or strategically focused. It can get stuck at a boardroom. Bill shares really fun stories of how the Oikos principle applied begins to create a legacy of faith. I'm excited for you to hear this conversation with Bill Staffieri. Bill, thank you so much for taking some time to talk about Oikos and the Oikos principle in your ministry. I always love starting these conversations out at the same place. What was the first time that you had heard about the Oikos principle?
Yeah, we were familiar with High Desert Church. Tom had spoken at a men's retreat. I mean, obviously in our network of churches, High Desert was like just, we were all kind of looking up to, hey, what's going on there? Something's working. And to be honest, the first time I heard Oikos, I thought, I've heard this before. It's another evangelism strategy. It felt very similar to stuff I'd done in youth ministry. We had student impact lists and different things like that. And so to be honest, it was like, yeah, this is great. I've been there, done that before, tried it a little bit. And I would say the first exposure to it, I once I started putting it into practice, I realized I don't think I get this. I think there's something missing, and which led us to myself. And I asked someone else to come with me to a training to listen to it with me, because I said I don't think I'm hearing this right. And so when we went that second time, myself and an associate, he was going to be a church planner with us. We listened to it different. And the thing that I think changed for us in that was, I think as Tom shared it, I think I must have missed it the first time, but what I heard the second time and what I began to see it the way that he wanted me to see it was, you've got to see this as a paradigm. You got to see this as a lens and how to look. If you look at this as a strategy, which I think a lot of people think, oh, this is another evangelism strategy, instead of a paradigm, a lens and how to see the world and to see the way that the church can impact the world, that changes everything. And so once we began, and myself and this colleague, we began talking about it, and during the breaks, it's like, oh, I think we're starting to get it a little bit. We started kind of, almost dreaming a little bit of how we might integrate it in the church. But that, I would say, at first glance, I think I missed it. On second glance, I realized, no, this is a game changer.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So there must have been something compelling about it. So even, kind of not fully getting it the first time, what was it that was compelling? What maybe the promise of what maybe I think it is, or, what does that look like, that promise that kind of led you to go back a second time, as opposed to just saying, this is some strategy, that's fine, and moving on?
Yeah, I mean, probably some of the interest, I think, is where I find, even when I am sharing the Oikos principle with other pastors, I mean, they're trying to revive a church, they're trying to grow a church. And I think they're trying to look for some recipe that will work. And I think that's what I was looking for at first. I think what changed was, and probably this helped at a little of my own maturity of now I've been the lead pastor for about 2 years. And what I realized was, I can't just try to create a strategy to get more people in the room. Like, I've got to change the whole mindset of our people to live on mission. And what we realized was, our church had really turned in on itself, and we wanted to be a church that looked out. And then you start asking those questions, like, if our church disappeared, would the city notice? Like, would we be missed? And what really began to be, I think, a passionate part of, we drove 2 hours to be at this training and 2 hours back. And I would say the the first 2 hours driving up there, felt like you're driving for 2 hours. You're doing small talk and things. The second 2 hours driving home, I don't even know if we noticed how fast the time went by because our minds were working so quickly with application and ideas and brainstorming. And what would it look like if we were to integrate a paradigm like this, a lens like this for our whole church to see our mission? And uh, that to me, I think it really launched us into a whole different way of embracing this. It started practices that we leaned into like never before. And I would say today it's so funny. It's just so ingrained in who we are now um, that we have to almost explain it to people like, hey, if you're new to us, you're going to hear us talk about 8 to 15, about your relational network, your oikos. Like we have to kind of let people know, like this is just in the water here, and you're going to go, what are they talking about? So it went from a strategy we could try at the end of a sermon or a series to a whole, like this is core to who we are now.
Yeah, that's great. That's a significant shift. I've felt the same as I've seen this, kind of served
Yeah.
in context where this is implemented as well. I'm curious if was there ever a time where there was kind of a hesitation? I don't know if it was early on or even as you were kind of in the implementation process, just doubts or
Yeah.
hesitations coming in.
Yeah, of course. So we made a decision. We we decided if this is going to be culture, it cannot just be a cute ending to a sermon like, hey, make an 8 to 15 list. Um, this has to be something that we integrate into it to everything we do. So we made a commitment that it would be included in every sermon for 1 year. And so, there you could start with some series where it fits very naturally, but then you have to really decide if this really is part of our culture. um, it actually, I think that's what actually allowed it to take grip with people because you could talk about whatever we talked about as a part of the Christian life, whatever we talked about as part of what it looked like to become a disciple of Jesus. We could say, as part of that, what does that look like then with your 8 to 15? What does that look like with your oikos? And we could take up any principle of anything we we're talking about and talk about what would that look like in front of these people. And I think as we were entering into that, there were times where we realized this is really hard to kind of keep thinking this. And it was like, they call it the diff. Like, you have to decide if you're going to push through the diff. And we did. I think when we hit those places that we felt like, are we shoehorning this in? Are we forcing it on? We realized, no, there's a very natural way in which our desire to live on mission with God and really to help people feel like, don't be overwhelmed by that concept of how am I going to change the world. You don't have to think that big. Just think about, as Tom says, right? Who's sitting in the front row of your life? Like, how is God already at work in those people? How is He inviting you into those situations? I remember one woman said it this way. She said, uh, I used to go to the grocery store. I just had my head down. I had my list. She goes, the thing that I'm noticing now is she said, this is kind of like a descriptor of really how my life has changed. I lift my head up and I'm looking and I'm aware and I'm asking God, is there someone that you're going to have me interact with? And and when I heard her say that, what I realized is our people now do not see this as a strategy to get new people to come to church. They saw this as, hey, I want to have my eyes open, my head up, and I want to ask the question to the Lord, how do you want me to live a life of mission? So we joke, we have a guy named Sid in our church. We call him, I said, pray the prayer of Saint Sid of Fountain Valley. Lord, who do you want me to bless today? And it's as simple as that. And so seeing that in some ways has become, again, it was hard to kind of think, could we get to that place? Could it be natural? And then when people started saying like some of those kinds of things, I'm lifting my head, I'm praying this simple prayer, I realized, wow, they're getting it. Like they see this the way that we want.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a cool story to see how it just it transforms the way that an everyday life, an errand, a boring errand, it
Yeah,
changes it from a task on your list to kind of a missional opportunity in a sense.
right.
That's great. Have you seen, like, what have you seen in your ministry now that you've implemented this? I know you've shared some of these stories. Have you seen a sense of the congregation kind of owning it? Has it been hard for people to jump in and get it? Like, what does
Yeah.
that kind of look like in that implementation side?
Yeah. I mean, part of it now is we have enough time doing it that we can share stories of the wins and the ways that we see this happening. So I think one of the things that really helped in our church was there was a way in which our people said, we saw it in you, and because we saw it in you, it made a difference. So my son was playing high school baseball, and he made the freshman baseball team. And I remember one night he was sitting in his room, and I was asking him, I'm like, what's the matter? And he goes, man, Dad, it's just hard being on this team. These guys are so different than the youth group kids. And so we took this whole 8 to 15, this Oikos principle, and I said, look, these are guys that God has put in your life. What if we just made a commitment to pray for them every night before the night ends? And we'll just see what God does. Maybe God has you on this team for a reason. And so he did. He was, this 14-year-old kid who began to pray this prayer, to be open. God, do you have me? Are these guys really, are they in the front row of my life? I mean, I know I'm on a team with them, but if you put me on this team for a reason. And to be honest, I mean, I was so confident my son was going to make the baseball team that I bought him a water polo ball and said, hey, water polo is also a good sport. So I didn't even think he was going to make the team. Um, he wound up on their first game of the year. They wound up having this like huddle, and right before the game started, they said they were like rapping and hyping each other up. And one of the guys goes, we should pray before the game. And he tried to pray, and he goes, I don't really know what I'm doing. Another guy tried to pray. He's like, I don't know what to say. And then they looked at my son. They go, hey, your dad's a pastor. Why don't you pray? And so he did. And then they looked at him and they go, that was really good. Like they won that game on a walk-off hit, and they turned to my son. They like, you are praying every game. And so it just turned into this thing where they asked him before. And I remember these parents telling me, they gave me, in fact, I have this picture still in my office. It's so special because one of the parents gave it to me. They took a picture of this prayer huddle, and they said, one of our favorite things is watching your son lead the team in prayer every week. This was not a Christian family. This is a public high school. By the end of that season, half that team was coming to our youth group. That summer, a number of them came to Christ. I remember one of the kids, his name was Tyler. He stood up at a victory circle at camp, and he said, I just want to thank Andrew for inviting me into this. This has changed my life.
Wow.
You fast forward to that, from that prayer moment of that was 16 years ago. You fast forward from that prayer moment, we have traced over 40 different people who've come to Christ. And this is a kid who wants to quit, who wants to run away and say, you know what, this is just too hard. And instead decides he's going to lean in and pray. This last Sunday, we had our high school intern. He got to co-preach with our youth pastor. That guy is like a third generation descendant of that prayer. He came to our youth group because his family found one of the families. But, I mean, it's just all these stories of, we had teammates, we had players, teammates, siblings, parents. We even had at one point a coach come to me, pull me aside and say, hey, I don't know what is going on, but something's happening and I need to know what this is. And he came to Christ. The players helped baptize him. And so again, this intern was this kid who was in trouble. The mom comes desperately to this kid, Tyler's mom, and says, what do I do? And she says, take him to the rock, they'll figure it out. And so he winds up coming and gives his life to Christ, and now he's going to be a pastor. It's like, so I love to share those stories. And of course, it's taken time for all of that. But part of it, I think, is to just help our people see, like, yeah, it feels impossible in some ways. Sometimes it feels like, is this going to work? Does God really want to use me? I mean, are those just stories from pastors and that's the kind of stuff they do? But the biggest thing I think what people have seen in our church is our church has every baptism we point to, look, this is the oikos, the 8 to 15 being lived out, because these are people that are in connection. They're friends, they're teammates, they're co-workers, they're neighbors. They're all these people. It's all 99% of them are relationship, like as Tom says, right? 90, 95% kind of thing. They are. It's 90, 95% is relationship driven. And so um, those are the kind of things I want to try to reinforce. I want to take people back again and again and again and say, look, you're already living in it. But I want to just try to increase the passion and the vision, and encourage you to live in it even more.
Yeah, it really is a worldview shift.
Yeah,
It's such a cool story to see how the challenge of the today, this moment, really kind of it reframes once you begin to understand it,
right.
from that perspective. So amidst some degree of reservation, let's say there's a pastor, a church leader, someone even who's just considering, does the Oikos principle make sense? I mean, these stories compel me, but I'm
Yeah.
kind of biased already. But what would you say to somebody who's wondering if this is something that, I need to begin thinking about this in my ministry? What would you say to kind of encourage them to consider the Oikos principle?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is one of the most tangible ways to live out Ephesians 4, that we as pastors and leaders are to prepare the people for the work of service. So this is it's one so I think, and to teach our people to live as sent people, John 20:21, as the Father sent me, now I'm sending you. Like, we're sent in back into the world. We can theologically believe that. There's kind of a, well, so what now? Okay, I agree. How do I do that? How do I even begin that? This is a great place to start. I think for a pastor to say this is not a hard place to start is, right. You don't select the people, you identify. So uh, at least 3 times a year, we just invite people, hey, prayerfully, thoughtfully, in this season, who has God already put in your life, right? Who are those people that are sitting in the front row? And so we'll give them time in a service or a reflection. We just did this, in fact, on Friday night as part of a worship night. Um, they, like, in this season, who's in the 8 to 15 of your life. And so we want them to like, we try to reinforce, hey, in this season, things might have changed. And so I think from a pastoral standpoint, this is an easy, yes, I want to live that way, but how do I even start? This is an easy place to start. Identify who God has already placed in your life, invite those people simply to start praying and ask, like, again, ask that prayer. How could I bless these people today? And so we try to help them see some of those people are, um, you might be helping them grow in their faith. Some of them, you're helping them find their way back to faith. And some of them, like I think it helps for me. I was someone who was outside the church. I did not grow up in church. Our family didn't go to church, but I was on an 8 to 15 list. I had a kid in my neighborhood who, in our family was going through a rough divorce. That family could have easily said, stay away from the Staffieri family. They're a hot mess. Instead, they leaned into this. They found all the ways to love and care for us that they could, even though we were really messed up. Um, and honestly, I'd never heard the gospel before. And so to be able to have someone, I think we have this assumption like, people just wouldn't be interested. And again, I'm thankful for a family. And so I try to encourage that. Like, there are people like me who don't know the best thing possible is just right on the other side of an invite, is just right on the other side of someone who will care about them or someone who will enter into their world. And so um, I'm forever grateful. I can't imagine what my family would be like without Christ. And that came as a result of someone reaching out to me. And so um, I want to encourage pastors to say, I don't think this is a hard place to start. I think your people will be energized. I think they will, if you will take the time to reinforce this over and over again, so that it's not a cliche thing at the end of a sermon, but it's actually a cultural mindset that we want to develop. You'll see it. And one of my favorite things was people began to come up to me, they'd introduce me to someone, and as they were walking away, they'd whisper, they're on my Oikos list. And I just loved that. I love that they owned that. Our church grew with real conversions of real people needing Jesus, not because I was a dynamic pastor. I didn't know what in the world I was doing, but because our people cared about their friends, their neighbors, their teammates, their coworkers, and so and I think they realized too that it was fun. I mean, we did little things. Even we've now invited people to be part of their baptism. Like someone on your 8 to 15 comes to a place of being baptized, we want you in the tank with us. And again, it reinforces, hey, this is what happens. Like when you're willing to step into this, you will see God work. It's not that God isn't ready. He's already at work in their lives, but he's inviting you to be a part of that. So he doesn't need us, but he sure seems to delight in using us.
Yeah, that's so good. It makes me want to get up and run to my neighbors, it's such a different view that we have of the world around us. I love hearing these stories. I appreciate you taking time to share them with us and just to share kind of your insights in terms of what God's been doing through the Oikos principle, but also just kind of helping people address some of those hesitations that they have as they're considering it. So thanks a bunch for taking some time to share that with us.
Always.
What a remarkable story of how a simple act of faithfulness begins this legacy, this generational legacy of a spiritual story. It's such a profound shift in the way that I approach the day-to-day in my own life. I hope for you it's impactful as well, not just in your own day-to-day. Obviously, yes, think through that and what these moments that God puts in your path are there for. How can you best leverage them and invest in the people around you? But also as we think about implementing the Oikos principle in our ministries. The Oikos principle gives clarity to this idea of turning ordinary, mundane moments into ministry opportunities. If you'd like help integrating the Oikos principle into your ministry, reach out to us at oikosmovement.com.